Um, that was the box. And this is Richard Kelly. Hi, Richard. Let me get my bearings. Okay. We were just discussing. I think I might be like schizophrenic. I might need to be hospitalized because I'm so convinced that in the Blu-ray cut of the film, there's a song that plays in the car with Dana and Arthur, a Pink Floyd song. And it wasn't in this. And I started freaking out thinking we were watching like a test screening cut with different footage or something, but Richard's telling me he doesn't have memory of that song even being in the movie.
No, well, what happened was we got great pop songs in the movie. There's Grateful Dead and like Eric Clapton. Like at the wedding rehearsal dinner, there's quite a few pop songs, and we were very lucky and very fortunate, as I have been throughout all my films, to have musicians help us out, and we can get the songs, and for the usually lower budget that they're working with, and for the car ride with James Marsden driving Gillian Jacobs back to the motel, we did mix an alternate version of that reel back when we mixed reels, because we were still doing film projection. We did a version where Pink Floyd's Fearless, so just let it fall. Fearless was playing on the radio, and it was beautiful. It was incredible. It like peaked when she's waking out and running into the motel and everything. But it became clear from our music supervisor, I was just doing a Hail Mary pass up until the final mix, just in case we could get Pink Floyd to say yes. And it was a no. It was a hard no. Like, it's really, really hard to license Pink Floyd unless you have like a really fat music budget. It was never gonna happen. So I mixed it, but that reel is in storage somewhere, and there's no way, as far as I know, like it ever got. You don't just accidentally put a Pink Floyd song.
It's in the movie, Richard.
It's put a Pink Floyd song that we couldn't afford in the movie. Like what? There's no way.
It's like that's my favorite fucking scene. Like it's so in the movie.
Was it? I didn't stay for.
Has anyone else like seen this recently? And you?
Yeah.
You're my alibi.
But maybe you have a special file.
No, I watched the Blu-ray. Pirate thing.
As far as I remember it, when they get in the car and he starts the engine, there's like a little bit of a local. We found some historical archival 1970s like creepy like toxic waste stuff happening in something, and then when you cut to the wide shot of Richmond, the freeway, and then they're driving later on, it's just quiet, and then score starts to creep in. As I remembered, I have not watched this movie in a long time. Am I crazy? Does anyone remember?
What?
Is it Metal?
What?
The song Metal? Is that what?
Oh, sorry, it is Metal, not Fearless. No, it's either
Did you
Fearless
Google
or
it?
Metal.
Fearless is the song, Metal's the
Fearless.
album.
Metal is the album. It's a beautiful song, and I wanted it so bad. And if I ever get to do like a deluxe special edition, it would cost. Oh, there's like CGI, and it would cost quite a bit of money to do a bigger version, longer version of this. I would go back to Pink Floyd and beg and beg and beg and plead. They would probably still say no, but I'll still try. But yes, it was Fearless on the album Metal. It's a gorgeous, beautiful song, and it ends with like soccer chants and stuff, and big and it crescendos when Gillian is freaking out and the nosebleed and she's running into the hotel. But I don't think it ever saw the light of day, or there would be like a lawsuit. So maybe you're in another dimension.
No, I am.
Which is totally acceptable.
I think I'm blacking out right now. I don't believe this is happening.
Anyway, sorry about that.
No, thank you for indulging me. What kind of studio notes did you get on this movie?
In terms of the Warner Brothers?
Well, I'm curious about like what maybe was like the most frustrating or kind of like antithetical to what you were doing studio notes. Sorry, I didn't mean to like attack you with that question.
No, it was not easy getting this movie to the finish line because it's obviously a really cerebral kind of existential Twilight Zone meets 70s paranoia thriller, and it's not an easy movie to kind of pin down. It doesn't really fit into a box, you know. And this was also 2009. Things have changed a lot. These kinds of movies are much more commonplace now, and so at the time this was like a really, really hard movie to get out, released on 2,600 screens. And it did get released on 2,600 screens, which was like, and so it was really, really tough to get. There were conversations, which often happens when a movie is just really confusing, and the test audience is just really confused and really upset at the end because Cameron Diaz is no longer. Her character does not live, obviously, and it's a very sad, depressing, gutting kind of Twilight Zone episode type ending. It was never going to be like a good test kind of movie. It wasn't going to ever test well, and I think, despite all of that, I think the sort of the fear response is just cut it shorter, shorter, 85 minutes, 80 minutes, just like that's like the panic response. And I have to kind of be there and be like, the more you cut out, the less it's going to make sense. It's just going to make even less sense, and it's going to be more abstract, and it's just going to make it worse. So just kind of let it be what it is. And so it was just more about meeting the contractual runtime, which is about 150, I think. It was they were basically like not a second past the contractual runtime. And there's stuff that I think there's more stuff that could go back in there that actually makes the ending more hopeful and uplifting. There's more spiritual sci-fi stuff, big spectacle stuff that we shot. I can talk about that later, but yeah. So it was not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but that was a long time ago, and I don't know. I don't dwell on that kind of stuff because we were able to get to the finish line. One of the most gut-wrenching things, the most stressful things, is there's like a 3-month period in post-production getting to the delivery date where we didn't think we could call the movie The Box because 20th Century Fox had first position reservation. They had their flag planted on that title in these sort of title registration bureau. It's a division of the FBI. The studios use there is people can squat on titles. The studios have a squatting system, and 20th Century Fox had The Box, and there was actually director Barry Sonnenfeld had a project in development called The Box, and Warner Brothers was filing paperwork request after paperwork request to get the title. Hey, can we have The Box? And it kept coming back, rejected. Someone in an office at 20th Century Fox was just hitting the rejection stamp. And they kept coming back to me like, Richard, we don't have the title. And I was just like, oh my God, if we have to change the title, word's gonna get out that the movie is, that's like a bad, sometimes not always, but when a title change happens, like deep into, before a movie comes out, sometimes people you see that as like a bad sign or something. And I didn't know what we were gonna call it. They were submitting all these other alternate titles just in case it wasn't gonna work out, like The Experiment. Some of them were just so bad, and I thought, should we just call it Button? That's the short story, and it feels a little. I don't know. It was really keeping me up at night, and so what ended up happening is Fox was in post-production on a movie called Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black and Hollywood One. Guess who owned Gulliver's Travels? Warner Brothers. They traded at the last minute. They traded titles. And it all worked out. It was like Deus Ex Machina. It was like parting of the heavens, and they got the title. And then it was just like, all right, you know, we're gonna do the best we can, and it went into theaters in November of 2009. And we were supposed to come out Thanksgiving weekend, but then after Comic-Con, Joel Silver went to the studio and wanted Ninja Assassin for Thanksgiving.
Great film.
So they swapped us right after Comic-Con. I got the call, hey Rich, you just lost Thanksgiving, you're gonna be November 9th now. They swapped you with Ninja Assassin. And I was like, ooh, I don't know, that feels like a bad omen. And then Paranormal Activity came out of nowhere, and just our opening weekend got like a 30 to 40% of our opening weekend got devoured. So sometimes the movie gods are frowning upon you, or the wind is blowing in the wrong direction. But anyway, that's all box office shenanigans. There's nothing you can really do about it. You know.
Jeez. I've never worked in this industry. So, I mean, I want to talk about Button because I gave it a read, and it's short, and it's like 9 pages, and it's quite slight, and just gets right to the point. And I also took a glance at the Twilight Zone episode as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can totally correct me if I'm wrong, but and I might be, but it seems to me as if this film is almost like a hodgepodge of both, because at the end of the Button, the husband dies.
Yes.
But then at the end of the Twilight Zone, it's the cyclical.
Yes.
Yes. And the design of the Button is kind of the same in the Twilight Zone episode. But the Twilight Zone episode is fucking crazy. I mean, it's...
That's how I first discovered this as a kid in the Twilight Zone one of the first remakes of the Twilight Zone, or new version of the Twilight Zone. When I was a very young kid, I saw it as in broadcast TV, and it just freaked me out, and it just stayed with me. And around 2003, I sought it out. Like, what was that? Oh, it's based on a short story. Oh, I found the short story. It was published in Playboy in 1971. Okay, Richard Matheson. Oh, he adapted his own short story under a pseudonym, and then he did it under a pseudonym because he didn't really like how he adapted it or something, and he just changed. He kind of put a pseudonym on his own adaptation for the episode, and was kind of, I think, didn't care for it. Didn't think much of it. So I went back and I requested to option his short story. I never met Mr. Matheson, which I deeply regret. I just never had a chance to. I believe he had a stroke, and he was living up in Santa Barbara, and so we were dealing with his literary agent, and I just kept sending a check every year renewing this option. And the short story was really brief, and as you described it, it takes place in New York, I believe. It's Norma Lewis, Arthur Lewis, and just Mr. Stewart. There's no Arlington, that's what I added. The husband gets pushed in front of a subway by mysterious men, and I'm not sure, it's mentioned, I believe, very briefly how he dies, and then Mr. Stewart shows up and says, "My dear, do you ever think you ever really knew your husband?" You know, that was the ending, and that was very interesting. But then I was sort of taken with the ending of the episode, which left the cliffhanger, like, I promise it will be someone you don't know who will get the Button unit next. And I thought that motivated me, like, okay, that's where we can take the film, the feature adaptation. I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to go into Act 2 and Act 3 and build up this big radical conspiracy. But I did only option the short story, and I had to be very careful when we were promoting the film. I feel guilty mentioning that television program that was very famous. I shall not mention it again, because I'm having flashbacks to my attorney calling me, because when I did my first interview to promote the movie, he's like, "You cannot mention redacted television show ever. You can't mention those 3 words. You're not allowed to." There was a whole thing, and so it's based on the short story Button, published in Playboy magazine in 1971.
That's damn right.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of adapting work, I mean, you've said, I think, somewhere that this is kind of a personal, you brought in personal elements to this, like your dad worked for NASA, your mom had a foot injury, I believe?
Yeah, when she was 15 or 16 years old in Littlefield, Texas, I believe, is where the accident happened. It's all very, very accurate to my parents' experience. Very down to the financial settlement that they made was for like $10,000 or $15,000 or something, which is like insane to think about. But that's what small town Texas was like in the very early '60s when her accident happened. It was 1960, I believe, when it happened. So like you're dealing with a very simple time, and that was kind of a lot of money in small town Texas for a malpractice, devastating injury from negligence from a doctor. But yeah, so it's all very accurate to my parents' experience. So that had a whole nother level of emotional intensity and responsibility and kind of stress to the proceedings. But I had Cameron and James there who were just wonderful and just two of the most incredible, supportive actors. And just the whole cast was just a dream to work with. Down to all the supporting players.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, like, is there something cathartic or kind of comforting for you about adding fantastical elements and Cameron Diaz on top of something that's very real for you?
Yeah, I mean, this was such an impossible story to kind of crack, and the movie is probably at the end of the day still kind of impenetrable. There is something, unknowable about the causality of death and the cause and effect of our actions causing indirectly the death of people that we don't know, and that's something you can have a philosophical debate about until we're all dead, So it's like we'll never understand exactly how our actions reverberate and affect other people indirectly. And so I just thought Matheson crafted something that was just kind of indelible and disturbing, and I think in his mind he just thought that's it, there's not much more to it, and I was this obnoxious kind of kid, like, no, there's more, we must do more, we must expand and add NASA and all this other stuff. And I think that's probably why I wanted to change the title and call it The Box, because I figured I'm doing a pretty radical adaptation. And I don't know, it just felt like something about the Button Unit and these sort of devious, sort of playful nature of the offer, it felt like some kind of mind control or morality experiment. I think in the film we ended up calling it the altruism coefficient. That was one of the NASA consultants. That's what he came up with. What is the altruism coefficient of the human race? So it was just something that I did my best to try to craft the ending so that it left you thinking, but there can never really be a full, explanation to how the Button Unit experiment plays out. It does go on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to me watching this because the structure of the film is that characters make choices and reap the consequences of those choices, but it feels like here everything is inevitable. And I mean, do you disagree? Cameron Diaz almost breaks the cycle, right, by like showing love for Arlington Stewart. But I don't want to keep rambling and just like digging myself
it's
a hole
all
here.
valid.
But
It's all
like,
valid.
it feels like there's something like just inevitable and fatalistic about everything that's going to happen, and I'm just curious how you like grapple with that while conceiving it.
Right. Well, it opens with people waking up. The opening shot is waking up. So right now you're in this sort of potentially this dream state, and they return to the bed and this sort of baptism stuff. So there is multiple interpretations of what you're seeing, but the spiritual component with all the liquid, the water coffin and Arthur going through the liquid and the water coming back into the bedroom and stuff. It's a lot of kind of transcendental passing through gateways and passing through salt water, seawater. There's a lot of like birth kind of rebirth and birth imagery and stuff, and all of that is meant to convey sort of a transcendence that Arthur does transcend into a much higher spiritual realm, and he is sort of, you know, whether or not they fail or pass the test, obviously they did push the button. Arthur tries to push it in an earlier scene, and she swats his hand away because he doesn't think much of it, and then he kind of convinces her that it's okay to push it, or she just loses her self-control or impulse control or whatever. But despite all of that, I feel like Mr. Stewart kind of is giving them aggressive hints and indications that they're going to be taken care of. And at the end, you know, there's actually dialogue that, you know, says to Arthur that he'll be taken care of, and that it's a brutal ending, but it's intended to be much more hopeful than probably people realize when they first watch the movie on the first view. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I agree that it's hopeful. I think there's something so. I mean, it's just beautiful how he smiles when she asks about the afterlife.
Yeah, well, when he gets taken into the hangar and stuff, clearly Arthur is being exposed to something much bigger, and there's clearly, with all the NASA stuff that you see, a much bigger apparatus working above Arlington Stewart. So they're exposed to some major sort of spiritual, supernatural stuff that sort of adjusts their point of view on the world by the end of the movie, I think. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great cinema to I lost my train of thought. To gesture towards something that we can't see because we as humans will never understand it.
yeah, and again, you know, I can't even say that I've figured that I figured any of this out, but it's a big swing of an exploration in thinking about kind of the consequences of one's actions, and I think that comes back to Matheson's short story, and what was so indelible about it for me was he just came up with the idea of this contraption and this simple, you know, this offer. And I will say it was one of the big reasons why I demanded that the movie be set in 1976. Obviously the connection to NASA and Viking and my dad and all the Mars stuff, which was historically right in line. And I had this thing with election years. I don't know why, like elections, are they really that important? But no, it's like, it had to be 76 for those reasons, but then it also had to be 76 and not contemporary, because the button unit experiment does not work in the age of smartphones and internet search engines and social media. We know everyone. There's literally like, you can find anyone, and it doesn't, the whole thing doesn't work. Like, it works if you only have like a yellow pages, you know, to look up, you know. And so it needed to be a period piece close somewhere in a few years after 1971 when it was written. I felt for the whole thing to work, because I didn't want to have Arthur and Norma like going on Google and looking up Mr. Stewart and stuff. I was like, that's not, no. I just read an interview with Steven Soderbergh, and he has this really quite good new Max event series called Full Circle, and there's a whole sequence where a character's cell phone battery is dying, but he said in an interview, he's like, man, smartphones are really tough when you're trying to do suspense scenes in movies, you know, because like all you gotta do is type in whatever you need to find out. Anyway, no smartphones in the box.
I'm always struck by the performances in this movie. I think they're very heightened. I think they're very expressive, and I think even the extras are quite expressive. And the woman that comes out, I heard a gunshot.
Yeah.
It's really wonderful, and this might be putting you too much on the spot, but it is a question that I do like to ask directors simply because I just don't think we really hear about it a lot. And I'm curious, like, let's set up the scene where Cameron Diaz is about to push the button. Like, what would you tell her? What direction would you give her?
Well, we had all the scenes with Cameron and James, we were shooting on the Genesis, which is a digital camera. Mainly because of the visual effects for Frank Langella's face, because we had to do background plates for everything and bring in the silver ball and reflection pass and all that stuff, motion control head and stuff. But it let us do endless takes with Cameron and James where we could just work through the intimate back and forth scenes. And there was a lot like shooting doing a play, because it was a lot of long uninterrupted takes, master shots, 2 shots, or just over the shoulder coverage where we had 2 cameras going at the same time. And I wouldn't yell cut. I would let them start fresh at the beginning. And that's a wonderful thing when you're shooting digital. Let your actors just do 5 takes in a row without yelling cut, because they are in the moment, they have the rhythm, they can make adjustments, you can give them notes, and then they just start maneuvering it to a more natural place and stuff. So with the button push scene where she actually pushes the button, that was just like a very delicate negotiation of like, how long should she wait? What should be their demeanor in terms of like getting really quiet and intense, like he's really starting to kind of believe this. He did the counterfeit test on the bill. We were just working through the logic so it all felt the motivations were getting to a place where when she does push that button, there was just enough debate and hesitation and hand wringing and sort of like, I don't know, and back and forth. We wanted to get to a place where they weren't pushing it too soon, or they weren't overthinking it, because there's a lot of stuff that we shot of them going back and forth before the button gets pushed. But we tried to get there just with enough. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, yes. The performances are just so beautiful. I'm just curious, kind of like what. I don't know. Yeah, that does.
Well, we knew we were doing a period piece. We knew we were kind of doing something that was earnest and sort of like, it was definitely like a PG-13 movie. I was like, there's not going to be any swear words. I wanted it to feel like, kind of like an old-fashioned Twilight Zone episode. And I wanted there to be something vintage about it. And so there was like an earnestness to it. It was a very deliberate choice not to have a lot of like contemporary sass or snark, or kind of like, we wanted it to feel like the characters were really deeply emotionally affected by all of this. And I wanted it to have like an old-fashioned kind of patina to it, which does lend it a certain degree of artifice or stylization, but that's what we went for. It's a very stylized film, and very deliberately composed and stuff. But the choice that I made, just again, I mentioned the damn title of that TV show that I wasn't supposed to mention. I think probably enough time has passed where they can't sue me.
It might be good.
But you guys did it. Even like the title design is a tribute. You can tell.
So I also wanted to talk about Stephen Poster, your director of photography. By the way, we're going to give a phone call in a few minutes.
Yes.
I spoke to him. And I asked him a few questions, and I just kind of, this is weird, but I just kind of want to relay what he told me and then get your perspective on that. Is that
Sure.
So, first of all, I always thought this was shot on film, and then I later learned that it wasn't. And I asked him about shooting on digital. He said it was both yours and his first digital project.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, like, so you added the film grain in post? And then he told me to quote him. He said, if you do it in post, you failed. And I said, okay, that's crazy. So it's all digital grain. That's cool. And then I asked him, I'm always so struck by the diffusion filter on the lens. it adds this bloomy quality that's so beautiful, and I have always been convinced that it's because the film is set in purgatory, therefore it has to look like this beautiful thing. And he just told me, like, well, I just do that on every film.
Steven's big into a lot of filter tests and all the new filters. He's on the cutting edge of technology and going to and testing everything and kind of developing new products that come in. Filters being one of them, and so we definitely did have a discussion of, you know, Steven worked second unit, a lot of second unit on Close Encounters of the Third Kind down in Alabama under Vilmos Zsigmond and Steven Spielberg, obviously, and we kind of talked about that film and some of the blooming kind of highlights and the softness of like some 1970s films. It was definitely a 70s discussion, a 1970s aesthetic to a certain extent. We knew because we were shooting digital, and this was in the kind of earlier days of digital, that it was a risk, and I was very adamant that we not have that sort of motion, that video motion blur that you can get if the shutter speed is not at a certain, there's not a governor on the shutter speed, you know. And like David Fincher had just done Zodiac a year or two before, and Zodiac was shot digitally, and that was set from the 60s up through the next couple of decades, and it was stunning. It was Harris Savides, and it was just this. It was the first time I had seen a period piece shot digitally where it did not take me out of the film. There had been some other films where you're well deep in the past, and you have this like digital motion blur where it just looks very, very digital, and you're in an era. You know, sometimes you're in like medieval times and they're shooting on digital cameras. You're like, this doesn't feel right. You know, you can see the makeup or you can see the motion blur. So we were really careful about the shutter speed and making sure that we weren't crossing that threshold. You know, because sometimes when we have bright daylight, sometimes you can get in trouble, and all of a sudden it looks really digital, and you gotta be careful.
Yeah, I mean, it looks just absolutely just breathtaking, especially on 35 millimeters.
That helps when you transfer it back to film. That helps too.
Yeah. I think we should try giving Steven a call. I don't know, Mitch, do you have any suggestions about how to do this, or should we just try to put this up to the speaker?
That might be fast.
All right.
Organize the Zoom real fast.
Oh yeah, I don't think we can do a Zoom. Okay. I'm gonna give him a call. See if this works.
You all hear?
Yeah.
Is it on speakerphone?
Oh, Steven? Hi, can you all hear him?
Hi, Steven.
Hi, Steven, can you hear? I'm with Richard Kelly and like 120 people.
Richard who?
We're talking about you.
My brother.
Well, Steven, I don't know if you have a prepared statement or something.
No, I was thinking all day about the snow.
It was so cold. A lot of real snow and some fake snow.
First of all, we went to Boston and they said, don't worry, it will never snow before Christmas. This was a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving. And we went up, we were shooting, we were shooting the trucks coming together, I think, the accident with the trucks. And the snow started and it was so fierce. We all stayed out in this motel near the location. By the next morning, it was up to our butt, up to our chest. And the rest of the time we were there, it was so full of snow that it really, we had to kind of change the entire direction visually of what we were thinking. And in fact, it really, really helped the country club tremendously. It would have never had the life that did without that snow. So it was good and it was bad.
Yeah, it started, the flurry started when we were shooting Cameron saying goodbye to Sam, the actor who played their son in the film.
Yeah,
And there was flurries coming, so that's a mix of real flurries and then some digital matching, because that's when the flurries started, but the snow got accelerated and got even more intense as it went along. And there's some digital snow that we had to match and everything, and I had to go back to the studio and be like, guys, it all has to match, and that was another, thing to deal with. But when we were out shooting the country club at the rehearsal dinner, when you see deep in the distance and there's the employees with the flashlights, lurking in the distance and stuff, that's all real snow, and it was a gigantic bounce of light.
Yeah.
We only had enough,
it
we
was,
didn't have like a James Cameron lighting package to blast lights
Yeah.
from a mile away and stuff, but the snow helped a lot.
Yep, yeah, it sure did. How did it look on film?
Great, everybody loved it.
Yeah.
One more or quick question for you, Stephen. The filter, do you remember the filtration that we used on it was the Genesis?
Yeah. Oh yeah, what did we use? Let me think. I think it was I think it was Promise. I'm pretty sure it was Promise. Yeah,
Well-
in fact it was. It was definitely Promise at that time. Yep.
Well,
Probably a number 2 Promise.
well, that's great to know. And it was just a very, very detailed conversation that we had just to make sure that it didn't look digital. That it had to. You got to work really hard to make this look as much like film as possible. And I think that's the danger of digital photography. That is, these cameras are so. They can capture so much detail at night, and just that they forget about the depths of effort that need to go to obscure the fact that things are digital. But
Yeah, in fact, there's a great story about Panavision Camera. They were a financial officer of the company discovered that they were keeping an entire warehouse of old lenses, and she wanted to throw them out. And the lens guy there, Ralph Shizaki, said to her, "Hang on a second, let me fool around with these a little bit." And he rebarreled a couple of them, and they were so fabulous. They ended up calling them legacy lenses, and they rent all of them now all the time, because nobody wants to live with the sharpness of what digital can produce.
it's, as Stephen, as you like to say, it's too much information sometimes.
TMI.
Yeah. Well, you can shoot in like 8K, but sometimes you really don't need to see all of that. You really don't.
No, absolutely.
It's meant to be a window into another world, and film can certainly provide that window pane for you organically, but sometimes there are cost prohibitive. I was saying that a lot of the reason to shoot digital for this movie was the CGI in Frank Langella's face and all the motion control that we had to do. It was so much footage of Frank to have to scan,
Yeah.
to have to edit and try to do different variations of removing his face, which we barely had enough money to pull any of that off, and so the shots of Langella had to be rendered at the very, very end after picture was locked. So we were not in a position to do a bunch of, we had temp shots here and there and everything, but it wasn't like we could scan all of this film to do his face.
Right.
That would have cost a fortune at the time, so. Yeah, I don't regret shooting digital. It was a wonderful experience, and obviously having someone like Stephen there to and having the digital intermediate and having the monitors on set was you can really see what the lookup, it's called a LUT, a lookup table, and you can see what it's going to look like on set, really.
Yeah, now it's even much more accurate, the way we work. It's really pretty remarkable, because we can increase the sensitivity of the camera, of the chip, and use very little lighting. It's really kind of exciting. I just did a movie in March that was a little horror comedy film, and I was using mostly battery lights, so it was really, we could move very quickly with it.
Well, thank you for calling in, Stephen. Evan here, his hand, I don't want his hand to go numb holding the iPhone speaker here, but everyone here at the Roxy has been wonderful. Everyone is still here, thank God. And it was a wonderful screening, and Stephen hopefully will be talking very frequently, very soon. Support the unions, support your local unions, and
Union president for 10 years.
yes.
And I'm telling you, this is a real existential fight that we're in. So support the kids. Thank you for calling.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Stephen. Talk soon.
All right. I promise I'm gonna open up to the audience really, really soon. I just want to get into some textual things, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Number one, and we can just kind of race through this. Did I turn this off? No. In the wedding rehearsal scene,
Mm-hmm.
Arthur is talking to, I believe his name is Dick, right?
Norma's father.
Yes.
Yes.
And he's referring to like who paid for this wedding, and he gets a little cagey about it.
Right.
Who is funding the wedding? Is it Arlington Stewart's people?
No. I think that that as I recall, he's paying for it. His other daughter is marrying one of it was like a featured extra. So that's a question I don't have an answer for. I think.
That's fine. I thought there was I have a lot of conspiracy
I
theories.
don't necessarily.
Now,
The employees are there at the wedding lurking, but I think that there's a comment where Arthur and Norma are sort of like, we didn't have the money for this. Younger sister.
I have a bag of visual aids.
Oh God.
I have a copy of No Exit. I'm not going to bring it up, but
Okay.
in No Exit, there's this whole crisis about how there's no mirrors in
Right.
in hell.
Mhm.
And in the box, there is a line where Gillian Jacobs says, "There's only one person who can save you. Look in the mirror, you'll see." Later on, Arthur falls out of the water coffin and looks at himself in the mirror, and it's this dramatic shot that zooms in.
Mhm.
What's the significance of kind of him observing or recognizing his physical form?
Well, I think that's once he's gone through the transcendence of the water coffin and he's teleported basically through fluid, and this is before he's even been brought to the warehouse full of light at NASA. There's something going on there, that's for sure. That he's going through periods of transcendence and sort of escalating, and I think preparing for the employees to do something otherworldly with him at the end of the movie. You know, he might not ever see his kid again, but he's probably going to see Norma again relatively soon. You know, so he's definitely there's something. They have bigger plans for Arthur, and they're sort of bringing him through this sort of escalating transcendental passage and so I think the reflection, it's him seeing himself in reflections through he sees his reflection in the water in the library. So we were playing a lot with the idea of reflections and Arthur's sort of escalating sense of approaching a higher level of existence, and he's sort of in this trance like state at the wedding and stuff. So there was a lot of discussion with James Marsden about that. But,
Cool. Now, I'm under the impression that there's about 40 minutes of footage that were cut.
yeah.
In the trailer for the box.
Oh my God, it's probably the record of the most number of shots that are not in the movie in the trailer. Oh my God, you have farts? That is an incredible sequence. I wish it would. That's one of the things that I would love to put back.
There's two shots from this. So
There's like a pod or an elevator or something, and there's a red button on the side. This is in the trailer, it's not in the movie.
I've been doing Q&As for upwards of 20 years. Not once have I seen this before, and I gotta hand it to you. This is incredible. So yeah, that's a set that we built in Boston, but without I guess I can spoil, but like, Cameron gets taken at the wedding, and he gets into the car accident with Santa in the snow. You don't see it, but then there's a deleted scene where employees come out of the woods and they drag him out of the truck, and then you see him coming out of the warehouse of light, which is down in Norfolk, a high security major Air Force base where we shot, and then they wake up in this padded room that was built, this incredible set that we built. It's like this circular, and there's like a bed and everything, and they've been injected with, and they wake up and they're freaking out. There's this insane noise playing outside of the room. Like it sounds like there's horrible, violent, there's like monsters outside, like this insane sound design that's freaking them out. And there's just a button on the wall, and there's a door, and it's basically implied that if they're gonna ever get out of there, they have to push the button, but there's this noise on the other side. So it's like there's them freaking out and her basically saying, just push it, and it's this incredibly tense scene, all done handheld in this small circular set, and eventually he hits the button and it opens, and it's this long cement corridor, and it's just, there's speakers playing these, and it's empty, and it's just playing these noises, and then they walk to an elevator, and they get this big industrial elevator of some kind, and they go down, and then you cut outside, and we actually shot all of this. It's in Boston. There's these gigantic sewage nuclear reactor egg-shaped things on an island. It's like the island where Clarice Starling was gonna send Hannibal Lecter if he signed a deal in Silence of the Lambs. It's like one of those islands, remember? He's like, Sewage Island, whatever. She's like, there's a horn's nest, nice beach. You know, like, it's like that is pretty much where this island is. It's right off of Boston, and we shot there at the top of this whole thing. We built that on the set, but they come down through the elevator and they come out through this gigantic facility, and there's dudes and there's employees there and military employees, and there's that black limousine is there waiting for them to take them back to the house. So that's this whole big sequence that got cut out of the movie.
Is this part of that?
That's a dream sequence.
Oh no. Oh god.
When Arlington takes her hand in the library and she passes out.
Yes, it's that
It's
also.
cross-cut with him going through the water coffin. She has this whole dream experience where she's in that NASA, those lights in the gigantic NASA hangar, where she sees her son on this floating metal pedestal that's hovering. We shot all of this, and he has a blindfold on, and he's standing there, and she's walking down, and it's foreshadowing that something is potentially going to happen with her son that we don't quite know. And it's just a big, majestic dream sequence that we shot, and it was cross-cut with a whole nother big action sequence with James Marsden. It was just it was a lot. It was a lot of intense dream metaphysical stuff, and the studio was just, it was just all about the mandate to get the movie shorter, and it's stuff that I kind of wish would go back in the movie.
Me too.
Yeah.
My final thing.
One day.
I hope.
Someone's got to pay for it. I ain't paying for it.
GoFundMe. Here I have an actual call sheet
Wow. I don't even
from
have
the
one of those.
box. Well, you can't have this. This was gifted to me for Christmas by Tyler, who's right there. There's scene. This is the day of shooting when they when James Marsden comes out of the NASA facility.
Oh wow, okay.
Now there's scenes on here that aren't in the movie, Richard. So let's see. There, you know what? It's a lot of inserts of comic books and cars.
Oh yeah, there was a whole there was a bus stop scene with their son where the employees have dropped off this mysterious comic book. It's foreshadowing they're sending a message to their son about what Arthur's destiny might be. And the kid has the comic book, someone left it for him, he's reading it at the bus stop. The family ends up getting their hands on it after the water explosion in the house, and they're going to the wedding. Arthur's reading the comic book, and there's inserts of it. We did little illustrations of it. It's almost, it's foreshadowing Arthur potentially being prepared to being sent to way into outer space, hinting at his destiny maybe at the end of the movie and everything. Yeah, we shot all that. That was a subplot. There was when Arthur goes through the water coffin in the library. There was a big teleportation sequence where he goes all down through warehouses and NASA labs and everything, and those kind of Keystone Cops guys who are chasing him, following him, they go through after him, and they're chasing him, so he has to find the next water coffin, and they're like all coming after him through like it's all this intricate cat and mouse thing that we shot all of it. It's really cool stuff, but it was just too long, and people were confused by it, because when we tested the movie with that in it, none of the CGI was finished because we didn't have the money to finish the CGI until the picture was locked, so you're kind of screwed. You have to show him just walking into a green, screen thing and stuff, and then people were so confused. They're like, why is he getting teleported, and why are those guys chasing him? And I'm like, well, it's kind of about enlightenment and passage gateways of enlightenment, and those guys they're actually just trying to motivate him through it's like a psychological test of enlightenment, and everyone's like, what? What? I just remember interrupting like a Q&A at one of the test screenings, trying to no, it's about the pathways of enlightenment, and the moderator of the Q&A, who worked for the NRG, which is the testing group for the studio, just looked at me like, you fucking dumbass, you're not supposed to talk about these things. Let me do my job.
Oh my god, I want the 3-hour cut of the box.
I'd say there's like 8 to 10 minutes of stuff that probably could make the movie. It's much more sci-fi and fantastical, but it's what the movie is. I think that was the stuff that people were really struggling to grasp, and I think the idea of trying to make something more accessible to a wider audience. Nowadays people are much more open to fantasy and sort of genre blending, and we're in a different place than we were in 2009. But the footage is all there in a warehouse somewhere. It's a big studio, but big studios are behind this, so it's not like some bankrupt company that's set it all on fire or something. It's there. Maybe one day.
Please.
It is a lot of CGI though. It is it costs, it's not like when you do like a Criterion that they can just rebuild 12 more minutes of CGI. It's expensive. It costs money.
Yeah. Well, it's good for me to want something, down whatever.
I think it could happen one day.
It's just good to have something to want. I don't know. So I want to see what do you guys want to say? We